So, hey, everybody, I'm Ray Keys. I work with TrafficVision. We're really glad to be working with Coral Sales. I met with Damien and Diane. Diane, I think you're on the call as well. A couple years ago at TRB, and we finally kind of formalized an arrangement to have them kind of represent us in the northwestern area. We're just so glad to do that. We work really with anybody, but we love to have somebody that has expertise, not only with our product, but also has expertise, you know, within your vernacular and your area, has the connections and has the relationships. But for those of you who've joined on, we've really enjoyed working with them so far. But it was called a coffee talk. Have to forgive me, I missed some of the earlier ones. I'm assuming this is going to be pretty casual. So those of you who have logged on, don't hesitate to interrupt me. If you have a question, chances are we'll get to it. I have a presentation that the folks at Coral Sales have seen before. I have some information in there that I think a slide down the road here might be from another state, but I put it in here to kind of give you an idea how we pitch TrafficVision. And kind of on a higher level view, what I've learned in my 10 years, our company's been around, our parent company's called Omnibon Systems. We're a software development company. We're distributed all over the world. We have identity management, identity management drivers that we support those. That's something that runs in governments and banks and stuff like that. We also write and maintain a parallel virtual file system, which is a storage and high performance computing. We have a cloud piece that we actually white label to AWS. We work directly with them, as well as we also work directly with Google. And then we have TrafficVision, and it's the one I understand out of all of those. I have a high level understanding of those other parts of our company and work with those, but I am the primary director of TrafficVision product development, bringing it to market and the public side of it. But the whole idea of TrafficVision is, if you already have cameras in the field, if you buy new cameras, what's going on the roads? Can the cameras assist your operators? And we kind of take a large swipe at features. It's one piece of software that is server-based and sits on a network, and we can talk about that later as well. But the whole idea is that, you know, letting you know if there's an anomaly out on the road and what to do about it, and reach out and poke an operator and say, hey, something's happening here, you might want to look at it. And also set it up, and we've built it over these years so that we're camera agnostic, we're hardware agnostic. You know, I saw Doug on there. We are camera agnostic. We've worked with WTI cameras and have a very favorable opinion of them. The idea is that you can adapt it to your system, and every camera is completely different as far as its location and distance to the road and tilt angle and zoom level and the road grade and where it's located in the country. And so depending on the specific camera, we have all these features, and some of them lend themselves to you know, you can use all of our features, some of them you can't. It just depends, and we can kind of walk through that. That's the high level, turning a camera into a sensor. Let's see. Typically, I mentioned, what is the big picture? What is an agency looking for? And they're trying to get, you know, real-time data that they can act on, understanding the conditions. And, you know, you ask yourself, is that it? And typically what we say is, it's not just that. You know, if you're an engineer and you want exact speeds, well, then you take your camera and you point it right at one area. You take your radar and you take a ton of time and you set it up and you do all these things to make sure it's just perfect, so you can tell that traffic is traveling, you know, 80 or 78.4 miles an hour. Well, operators, you know, in reality, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for, is traffic flowing or not? And they also want to know if something's unusual. And so what we've learned is that our software can do those things. It can tell you if traffic's flowing. It does a very good job of telling you speeds and counts. If you want exact speeds, for instance, You set up the camera, and we spend a lot of time calibrating it. We get the exact distances out there, and still it's a fraction of time that it would take to set up a radar, and you can do that and you don't move the camera. But we also say that we work with PTZ cameras. So that's an example of, yes, we do, but in the case of getting exact data for a 24-hour period, obviously you wouldn't move the camera, just like you wouldn't move a radar detector. Or if you're staring at the road, you wouldn't be looking everywhere, you'd be watching the road. So we say that. And so what we learned is if anything's unusual on the road, you want to know. And the sooner you know, the sooner you can act. So what makes TrafficVision unique is what we provide data, but it's real time. Well, I said unique, actually, that's I misspoke. What are the high points? And that is providing real-time data so that you can act on what's going on the road immediately and understand what's going on the road. I'm not going to read these off to you. So the cost of congestion, typically when I speak to an agency, this is the latest numbers from TTI. It's $30 per person per hour. So 4 people in a car, that's times 4. And then also per truck. So it's interesting, one's per person, the other's per truck. But to understand that, how do you mitigate that is what we'll talk about a little bit later. And then secondary collisions. So you have the cost of what's going on in your roads, and also you have the other side of safety, what's going on. And we know that secondary collisions usually have a high incidence of the mortality rate goes way up in those. So in Connecticut, I just recently presented to them, and these are federal numbers. In 2018, I guess it's the Insurance Institute came up with $1.5 million per fatality in 2018, which is, I mean, that's a ton of money. I don't know where they come up with that, but that's actually the same number that the FHWA uses. But even if it's $1 million or $500,000, if you think about in 2018, Connecticut, and Connecticut, it's tiny. They had almost 300 fatal injuries. And so when it talks about RMA and how you're trying to justify the cost of something that may be able to help you react to situations on the road faster and save lives, as well as cutting down congestion and the cost that's associated with those things, that's really where we come into play. Typically, by the time we get to speaking to an agency, they kind of already know these things. So those of you who are on, if you know this, sorry if it's remedial. But I do like to share those numbers. The big picture is this. We did a pilot in Georgia. It was a very large pilot, and the bottom line is that we reduced the time it took to respond to congestion by 30 minutes. We also reduced the time of recognizing an incident on the road 6 to 8 minutes. So I say 6 minutes. But even if it's 30 seconds faster, it's helpful to have this. There's nothing like an operator sitting there and TrafficVision pops up and there's the WTI camera, and you zoom in and there's an accident before you get the first 911 call. First of 10 calls, all describing the same thing, and that completely different. There it is right on your screen. And that's really our big value, is taking what you already have out there and suddenly they start talking back to you. We're very aware of the human factor. And we've built things into the software so that you can mitigate things like you certainly don't need software to tell you it's rush hour, but you do need software to tell you that during rush hour, it's unusual that normally traffic slows down to 15 miles an hour and now it's completely stopped, or those types of things. And we have that built into our software to help the agencies better deal with that. And I just started rolling here, and just to mention to you, I have this PowerPoint. We can also look at some live deployments out there, and we can actually see the software, see some of these things. I can show you live events. It's really fun. It's like rolling the dice. We'll see what an instance in Tennessee, what kind of events they had in the last 24 hours, or for that matter, we can go back months. So today, I mentioned already, we'll talk about the features of TrafficVision, a very brief technical overview. I won't get too far in the weeds. We'll look at detection sample videos. We'll just briefly touch on that GDOT pilot just because we have kind of an interesting thing. And then I mentioned Tennessee dot. We can look at some others, but if we have time, we can also look at some live instances. And for that matter, we could share, I could calibrate some cameras right in front of you so that you'll see that. Hang on just a second. So everybody's working from home. My wife just showed up. So this is what we offer. Depending on the camera view, depending on your network, depending on the distance to the road, tilt angle, all of those things. It's one suite of software that offers all of these features. And what we primarily focus on is incident detection. Because ultimately, if we can give you this data, per lane counts, per lane speeds, just that alone, then we can give you all the math from that. But in addition from that math, we can tell you if a car stops, or a group of pixels is going and it's going at what speed and it's in what lane, and if it's stopped, if it speeds up, if it's going slow, if it's going the wrong way, or if it's not a car, it's some sort of debris in the road, or it's pedestrian. We can tell you those things, and that's really the strength of TrafficVision. And with that, we'll just kind of kick right into it. What makes us unique, I mentioned this earlier, is that we have this flexible, scalable architecture. It's server-based. We can be deployed on the edge. We can be deployed in the cloud, which we're seeing much more of. It's server-based, so we can be deployed in-house. You can spin up a virtual server, or we can provide new servers. It's specifically designed for transportation, which is pretty unique in that there's a lot of video detection software and algorithms out there. There's some really good ones. I believe that we're the best. And that's why we love our customers. They can just kick the tires. We can if we get access to video streams, we can actually say, kick the tires, let's try it out. TrafficVision was an algorithm that was designed from the ground up to be video detection. Most of them out there were designed from the security standpoint, which is also very good, but it wasn't designed specifically for traffic. What you're looking at here is auto learn. So this is right out of the box. The software can tell you if traffic's flowing. It can tell you if there's congestion, which is that yellow annotation there. And it also can tell you if vehicles stop. And it works with a PTZ camera. So you can see the camera's moving, it finds the road again, it finds the dominant direction of traffic flow, and it tells you what's going on. So having a hardened software that's proven these days is critical. Let's see, move on. This is one thing that we show is unique. This is showing automatic recalibration. It's important to point out that we have no idea what kind of camera, tilt angle. We don't know, any of the physical characteristics, the optics of the camera. All we have is a video stream. But with that video stream, the software understands what a base view is, and it understands the direction of travel from that point, and then it works from there. So in this case, this is an old video, but it's one of my favorites because we were looking at a camera in Georgia, and this is the very first time I actually saw automatic recalibration work, and it was years and years ago. But you can see where the camera moves, it zooms around, it puts the lanes in there, and then it begins counting again. One thing I'd like to point out, though, is since we do not know focal length, if a user takes a PTZ camera and they zoom in, the speeds at that point, the speeds are not accurate. And so typically you set up a camera and you calibrate to a home position where we have a known length. And then from that point, you have accurate speeds there. But it kind of goes back to what I was talking before earlier. If you really want accurate speeds, you're not going to be, you won't be moving the camera all over the place. You go and investigate what's going on, and then you bring it back to your home position, which is calibrated, and your speeds are correct. Here's a sample. This is just a screenshot of a piece of data from the UI. And by the way, this is a web-based UI. So you can have multiple users. There's no limit to the number of users. We have it set up where you can have users and levels of access. And with that, they get certain pieces of information out of the UI. We'll actually look at that in a little bit. Let's see. This is a very confusing graphic that just shows how versatile or flexible TrafficVision. In particular, the main thing I want you to get from this is that we can operate on the edge with edge units. We can operate in the cloud. We can do on-premise servers, and we can aggregate all of those. As long as these are all on a network, it doesn't matter to us. They're just nodes that become one part of one thing that's all aggregated together to the thousands of cameras. It's just dependent on how much processing you have or how many cameras you have. The simple way to put it is cameras, our analytics, we integrate with ATMS, and then it goes to the user. We have an open API that's very simple. We're told it's very elegant. But it's very simple. We have no problem sharing that, and we welcome integrating with whatever ATMS system. TrafficVision can stand on its own. Right now, I'll mention Georgia a lot because we have a lot going on there. Looks like the entire state is going to adopt TrafficVision, and that's to the tune of a couple thousand cameras. They just pick. I think might be Capsh, who's going to be their ATMS. And so they haven't integrated with Capsh yet, but for over a year, they've been using TrafficVision just with our UI on a standalone basis. And we're ready to integrate with their system once they get everything in place. This is what calibration looks like. We can see this again live in a little bit, but I just want to show this to you to show you that these black squares are where we collect data, the black rectangles. The green are where we collect incident detection. And then the arrows, it's in there to show you that we can tell you, you can assign direction of travel. And over here, you can set up an infinite number of rules. So you can set up managed lanes for time of day, day of week. You can set up contraflow, whatever it is, you can go in here and set this up. And we see this in some of the managed lanes now, where they reverse the direction and we have no direction for 15 minutes. So they clear it out. They just want to know if there's a car in there or not. And then they reverse the direction and run that for a little bit to make sure they have no wrong way direction alarms. And then they flip the switch and they reverse the lanes. So we're able to do that as well with the software. Is there any questions so far? Are there any questions so far? All right. What I'm going to show you are incident detections. And when an incident is detected, you'll get an image like you see up here on the right. And I always say this particular video, this is stop vehicle detection. It's in outside of Toronto. And I believe it's distracted driving. Did you all see that?
Yes, I can see it, Ray.
Okay. Didn't know. I was wondering how much delay there is. The reason I make my children watch this because I do believe it's distracted driving. But what happens is here we have a stopped vehicle, and then the moment that happens, and you can user configure, how long after a vehicle stops do you want to tell the operator? In this case, you can see at 14:27, 24:27, and so this one was set at 30 seconds. 30 seconds later, this image goes out as an alert and pops up on the screen, and you can set that to be immediate. But that's what the image it looks like. And the reason why we have this video is we have a rolling buffer. So the user can define, give me 30 seconds before an incident and up to an hour afterwards. You can change any of that. You can do 5 seconds before and 10 seconds afterwards. It doesn't matter. And it grabs that video, and that's available too. And we can see that in the UI. Here's another example of stop vehicle in the distance here. We have a guy spin out. What's interesting about this is the detection. If you look, you see the red box around the stop vehicle, but also you'll see the yellow annotation there, which is picking up the congestion, which is secondary from that. And we'll look at that in just a minute too. Put this one in here because it's just crazy. We're getting ready to see snow, right? Not Doug, but you guys are getting ready to see snow up there. We get asked, does it work, in weather, it does, it works in heavy rain, it works in snow and blizzards. Rule of thumb is if you can't see it, then the algorithm for the most part can't see it. But we do have, one of our features is low visibility, and with low visibility, if a blizzard or whiteout comes up, or sandstorm, or smoke from a fire within view or something out of view, whatever the case is, it will also warn you for that, which is pretty cool. And the idea of low visibility kind of lends it, or helps us explain that this is what you're looking at is the worst it'll ever be, because we're constantly improving this technology. So as our customers come on board, as we improve the software, we mitigate something we've never seen before, where we go in the algorithm and there's a certain kind of look at this time of year, or whatever the case, we'll go in and the engineers will work on it and mitigate it, so we don't have a false positive from that thing that's never been seen. And we push it out. And what's really cool is later on we'll look at low visibility, but there's a new feature, and with permission, we reached out to all of our customers and updated their software, and they had a new feature. No extra charge or anything. It's part of the entire software suite. Here's an example of heavy rain as well too. Pretty ugly at nighttime, not the best view, but even in this case, we'll pick up a stopped vehicle. And that one's actually a car crashing into the Jersey barrier. But we picked up those stopped vehicles. And sometimes you'll see the annotation show up on the screen. This one did. Sometimes it doesn't, because the user also has the ability to turn annotations off or on the recorded video. But a practical application is usually we have it off, because once you get this alert, usually the operators are looking at the live video. They're looking at the high resolution live video, and then they zoom in and check it out. Another example of a stopped vehicle. So my understanding is the rain's coming now up in the Portland area. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have our first nice storm coming in tomorrow.
Yep.
Wow.
Storm weather warning, but it's still gonna be here. It's still gonna be nasty.
Yeah. Some of the most beautiful country I've ever been to is up in that area, and I love it where I live here on the East Coast as well. You all are always welcome to come visit. Slow traffic is another incident detection. These are all user definable. You can set it up per camera of and define actually what slow traffic is, not only a speed, but how long is it slow, and before you tell the operator. This is like watching paint dry, but you can see the annotation up here when it eventually shows. Debris in the roadway, here's something common. You see, what do you call that? A retread come off a truck. We see that all the time, that and mattresses and things like that. So that's what you would expect. But this one, I love to show this next incident, because if you look in the top left, this is actually the detection, and it doesn't look like it's anything. In fact, it looks like a false positive. But if you watch the video, you'll see immediately what happened. This one's also really cool, because you can see the algorithm really working and trying to figure out what this is. And it eventually determines that we have debris in the road, and in fact, you have a truck driver who dropped his payload. I'm gonna let this go because it's gonna show up in a second. Let's see. Go to, yeah, we got another 10 seconds. And also, if you notice, when you see the squares on the vehicles, if you see 2 squares, that doesn't mean it's counted twice. It's just looking for feature points and determining what it is. Is it 1 vehicle, 2 vehicles? What lane is it in before it leaves those black boxes we looked at before? Out of the box, our software actually has green streaks, because we would always have questions from people watching this saying, hey, you missed one, or, it counted that one twice, which is actually not the case. It's just, how it's annotated live. Pedestrians, we get asked about this all the time. I call this one the soft squatch detection. But this is just showing a pedestrian crossing a road. Really cool. This is in Tennessee because they found out that off this road here, there was actually an encampment that they weren't aware of, where they had a bunch of people living in. So that was, much to the surprise of everybody there. But when you have a pedestrian detection, it's a blue box, and it actually will give you the that case the annotation came up as red in that one, but it'll show you the path line that they went and determine that it is a pedestrian. With our software, what's interesting is just because you see something and you think it's something, the software, the last thing you need is a 1,000 false positives. So we have a great deal of experience of having this deployed and writing things into the software, so it mitigates what might have been something only to find out it was a false positive, whether it's a drip going down the lens of a camera, which you don't see with WTI, by the way, or it's a leaf blowing by, or trees waving in the wind, or snow, or whatever, before it actually tells you that it is something. That mitigates typically those things. Here's what I was talking about before, low visibility. And this is interesting because you'll see, and I sped that up, there's a lot of packet loss here. And we're completely dependent on your network. We're dependent on, having a steady stream. But even in this case, we're able to detect low visibility, and that's what that looks like. Same thing. And all these detections, again, you can have these assigned per camera, per groups of cameras. You can have unique settings for every single camera, and they can all be switched. You can move this from camera to camera and so on. Same example here, some testing, tunnel testing we did. Wrong way drivers. So we get this a lot. The software includes this. If you remember, we do not control the camera whatsoever. And so the only caveat with the wrong way drivers is if you have it turned on as a detection, then the user, the operators, have to agree not to move the camera. And the only reason is if they were to move this camera, this do not enter sign right here would actually appear as if it were moving. It might be detected as a wrong way vehicle. Another side note is that this particular wrong way driver is actually an engineer testing our system, and he didn't tell us. It was pretty funny when he came into the conference room asking us if we saw him. It's a guy named Marty. Pretty funny guy, and I'll always keep that in our presentations. Here's an example in Georgia, somebody very dangerous, backing up broad daylight on the shoulder here. We picked that up. Here's an example in New York. This is a public stream that we pulled in the cloud so I could show them. And what's really cool is this particular stream actually, it has an arrow in it. It's like made for marketing. And of course, we picked up this wrong way driver. I always tell my kids nothing good happens after midnight. And here, that's almost 3 a.m. in the morning. It was very powerful. I was able to show this to them. There was not a police report. They had no idea this ever happened. So the good news is nothing bad happened since there wasn't a police report. But the bad news is that this did happen and they were completely unaware of it. So a real world application. I mentioned Georgia before. We've been deployed now for 7 years. We're in Missouri and Kansas. We're in a list of states, but Georgia is the one that really kicked the tires hard. They went out, they ran a pilot with over 180 cameras. They had them all over. We had to use their existing cameras. They wanted one camera per direction. And it was just total overkill, but it was very cool for us. They ran a blind pilot. They ran a blind pilot. And so it was great. We got to kind of test it against the operators, not to, prove them wrong or anything, but to show them that, hey, look, we discovered all of these anomalies happening on the road that much sooner than you did. So this will really be a tool in your toolbox that you can use to help you respond faster. But this is what we did. And here's a typical crash where you have a car going off the road as well as something hitting the Jersey barrier. And, we pick up all of this, but the prominent one is in the direction of travel. So we picked up the stop car, and obviously you get the alert in the top right. But I mentioned this is 100% coverage, so just 2 cameras, this camera and what about the camera up the road? So here's the same incident where you picked up this crash, but also from that crash, you also pick up from the same camera slow traffic that's a result of that. But then the camera upstream from that also picked up congestion, and then you can see way up here, you can see the incident in the top right corner, but you can also see eventually this vehicle, you have this immediate congestion, and then of course stop traffic. And once we're able to show this to the operators in Georgia, and they could compare this time sequence to how they reacted in this area, it was the next steps were very easy to convince them that this was a very good investment and that would help them. Because again, they have thousands of cameras. They're very forward thinking when it comes to technology in their roads. We've learned a good deal from them as well. And kind of a recap from that, we did it over 8 months. We had about 31,000 stopped vehicles. That's a lot. They weren't necessary things to act on, but what was very cool is they built a heat map from that data. So they have what are called hero trucks that go help stranded motorists and that sort of thing. And they started placing all of their hero trucks closer to the high incident areas on this heat map from all these stopped vehicles, which was really cool. And so they're cutting down their time to serve their public on the road. I mentioned this before. We cut down their incident detection time as far as reporting. And so now they've incorporated this in addition to using it for data and planning and all those things, they're using it for incident detection in very unique places, whether it's on the highways in downtown, the I-85, 75 connector that goes right through Atlanta, Georgia, or in this case, what we looked at, a very rural area, 475. There's 2 different ways of looking at it. One of it is they don't look at all these outlying roads or cameras. And so having TrafficVision saying, hey, look, there's something going on way out here is very valuable to them. And then also they have so much going on in the city that they can't possibly look at all of these cameras. So when you have this massive congestion from 3 p.m. To 7 p.m. every weekday in Georgia. I mean, it's insane. When something happens, cars actually stop for a certain period of time. They're not just going slow. The camera pops up on their system and they know to react and send out help immediately. And that's how it's worked for us in Georgia. Being able to take cameras and raise the awareness of what's going on the road, being able to react to things faster so that we have less congestion, less backups, less time on the road. It's always cool. And I know you're the same way, and all of us are. And that is what we're doing affects not just the customer, but it affects all of us. It's our roads. We pay for them, and it's our family and who's in the seats with us. And so, it's very rewarding to kind of do what we do. Plus, I'm a pretty big, always been a technology guy. And so, I kind of geek out on this stuff. I'm blown away. And I think it's really cool. And it's getting, right now, the technology that we're using is pretty neat. Tesla just came out with some of their algorithm stuff that they're using was, we were just talking about this yesterday, some of the new stuff that they came up, the theoretical stuff that they're starting to use, we actually incorporated within TrafficVision about 14 months ago. And we were a little surprised that, they weren't. So our guys are ahead of the curve. This is video detection is, it's been around a long time, but first video detection, there were tons of false positives and it's slowly getting, lower. And this is probably video detection, 4th version where, it's really useful now. At first, it became white noise because it was just, anything, it would detect anything and it would send out an alert and it became, white noise and would bother you. But now we're starting to see unique applications of it. And we're moving towards, our next version is 3.0. And I should never say this. You never say this in software development. We're probably a year out. But we're doing stuff, we work directly, as I mentioned, with both AWS and Google. We've done a couple million-hour studies and high-performance computing where we're doing all kinds of uh, building libraries. And so the newer version is going to really be able to do some spectacular things for us. But I'm actually over my head in explaining that. I don't know how to explain it. They just kind of explained a little bit enough to me that I was impressed. Everybody else on the call, this is actually, we're right now logging into the cloud. And this is actually an instance set up on AWS. And in particular, these are all cameras, and they're all public cameras from Tennessee. And so this is from their 511, and this is live. And this is our UI. And what's really cool about this is this is happening. Can you all see all the little squares on the screen?
Yeah, I can see him.
Yep,
Okay.
I see them.
Cool. This is happening completely separate from their DOT. As a matter of fact, I was able to show them all this, and they were just kind of going, how did you do this? And first of all, it wasn't me. I worked for some pretty smart people, but we were able to go in and just find the addresses of these public streams out there on their 511 site and load them into this instance and suddenly give them data. And these blue ones, this is, you can tell right here, their network for these particular streams, in this case, is down. And that's not us, it's just their system. The colors indicate if there's an incident on that particular camera. And you can go in and you can look at unique cameras. And these are all live shots. I'm trying to get one that is not blue. There we go. Well, there's a very simple one, but nobody's, oh, there's some people on the road. So yeah, that's what the weather looks like in Tennessee. Oh no, that's VDOT, as a matter of fact. That's actually where I've dropped in this is a test thing, and I actually dropped in from Virginia, test site there, showing them some things. The rest of them are Tennessee. I'm just looking for a good one we can calibrate. So we have no control of them moving these cameras. If you look at this particular view right here, I love to take a view like this. We have no control. The operators don't know we're doing this, but if you look at this view, there's just a fraction of this entire screen that is road. The rest of it is trees and sky. And so there's a little bit of teamwork that happens when we go to deployment. We sit down and we work with the operators, and so that they understand if they want it to help them, they have to help them. You know, they have to go to good views with a camera and, you know, not look at clouds all day or, you know, whatever. And so that's an example of not the best view. You know, you would take this and tilt it down and pan to the left, and you'd have a great view right there. Here's an example of a pretty high camera and a really cool view. And here's what, you know, here's live speeds, mile per hour per lane. And there's the data we talked about. And this camera is set up so that right now, it'll tell you if there's a stopped vehicle, if it's stationary for 30 seconds. It'll tell you if the congestion is above 70, and the congestion index that's our default, is actually a proprietary number that we use, and it actually goes in and looks at that road and understands what flowing is and the number of cars. And once it understands what is normal, then it develops an index for that particular camera view, and then, you know, 70 being about normal. We can also set this up so, you know, here's where you can fine tune all these things, whether you can set it up where if this index changes, and the amount of time it takes. So if something gets congested really fast, but then it opens back up again, you don't care. But if it does it, and it does this from a certain amount of time, then you might want to know that's going on. Same thing with pedestrians. We can pull that in, slow speeds. And that's what these are up here. These are alerts. Oops, I went right to that camera. I have my Zoom is covering this up. So this one is showing us that there's a stopped vehicle. And can you all see that? It's probably pretty small. This is what an alert looks like, exactly what we talked about. It's for this view. And there's the alert itself. And depending on how long ago it happened, like right now, it just happened. So we can't even see the video because it's still recording the video. But if we were integrated with the system, that camera would have been pushed to the forefront, and the operators would see that camera right then and be able to go in and investigate. One thing that's kind of cool, if we look at the data, that's what I talked about before. Here's all the incidents for this particular, for this day since midnight last night. And so here's all the stopped vehicles and congestions and pedestrians, if there are any, like I said, all the way until midnight last night. There's a stopped vehicle in the distance on the tunnel. That's pretty cool. And you can go in and you can say, well, give me all the pedestrians. P-E-S-T-R-I-N-S. And see, so we had no pedestrian detection. And let's see if we had any yesterday. None. Surely we have a pedestrian detection. Yeah, so here's one. I don't know why the image is not showing up. There it is. That was weird. Oh, it was just a browser thing. So there's what that pedestrian detection looks like. And if you have any questions, reach out to, obviously, everybody at Coral Sales, and there's I'm kind of the main guy with TrafficVision, but I have a colleague, Clement Law, who's actually lives in Canada, and his wife is trying to travel today. So she's getting tested. They have to do it within 48 hours and all that kind of stuff. But Clem really lends me a hand in the Northwest, the northern part of the country. And I hope you get to meet him too. And then we have another group. We're the two primary salespeople. Most of our sales is not outbound, it's inbound. We're small, we're very intentional about our growth. And I mentioned Doug Cartwright. We worked with WTI and Lester and those guys. And we're looking forward to kind of doing some things with them in the future. So we'll see how all that goes. But Hector, if you have any questions, it wasn't at the end of that, but I can pass along. It's Ray Keys, R-A-Y-K-E-Y-S. No dot in between. Ray Keys at TrafficVision.com. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. I love to tell everybody that if you have a camera, if you have anything, or you're just curious, would we work with something? Send us a screenshot and say, hey, what would your system do with this kind of view? That sort of thing. And I would be more than happy to do that. And with that, Ryan, everybody at Coral Sales, thank you for this opportunity. And we're looking forward to doing some more with you.